بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وبارك على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. Alhamdulillah, we have reached our next part, which we wish to discuss in relation to this chapter of Talaq, the chapter pertaining to divorce, and it is specifically regarding in the chapter in relation to the اختلاف وباب ما يختلف به عدد الطلاق. So the chapter pertaining to what is differed upon in terms of the amount of divorces given. The amount of divorces given. And so the author, he begins raḥimahullāh by mentioning المرأة إذا لم يدخل بها تبينها طلقة. تبينها طلقة وتحرمها ثلاث من الحر واثنتين من العبد إذا وقعت مجموعة. And so he begins by mentioning the woman that has not consummated the marriage, then she is divorced by way of one utterance of the divorce. So one utterance of divorce is enough to end the marriage. What we mean by ending a marriage in terms of it being a irrevocable divorce. What is meant by irrevocable divorce essentially, Ikhwan?
You can't take it back.
You can't take it back ever?
Until she marries.
Until she marries and
she divorces.
Until she remarries and consummates that marriage. No, so it's not just the fact that she has to have a new marital contract with another individual, but she has to have consummated that marriage as well. No, so in relation to the woman that has one, or the woman that has not been married, or she hasn't consummated marriage rather, then this ends the marriage in terms of the one talaq. No. And so there's no iddah. That's essentially what it means as well. There's no iddah. There is no waiting period. There's no waiting period in this regard. As for other than that, so the woman that has consummated, then the one that is hur, so the husband that is a free individual, then they possess the ability to divorce 3 times. وَإِثْنَتَانِ مِنَ الْعَبْدِ. And as for the one that is emancipated, or the one that rather that is captivated, so the one that is a slave, then he possesses the ability to divorce twice. Now, so this is the clear difference between the two. This free individual can divorce 3 times. Now, whilst the one that is a slave can only divorce twice. So and this is essentially what is the right of each individual. Then it mentions as well, إذا وقعت مجموعة. Now, so if it is mentioned 3 times, now, so it's mentioned 3 times, then with that the talaq also occurs. And it's talaq which is ba'in, irrevocable. Now, this is if the person mentions the divorce 3 times in one go. And we mentioned that this is, we discussed previously that this is mahal khilaf. There's ikhtilaf, there's a difference of opinion. If the divorce is mentioned 3 times in one sitting, if you like, then the scholars they differ. So they all agree that it's going to be at least one. Does that make sense? So they all agree it's going to be at least one. The Jamhur, so the majority of the scholars, they say that this divorce has occurred 3 times. Because the person has mentioned it 3 times. Whilst there are others from amongst the scholars that mention ما يقع طلاق إلا واحدة, that the talaq doesn't occur except for once. Except for once. Why do you think that is? That they say it's only once and not 3? It's on one occasion. It's on one occasion. Not essentially that though. It has to have an iddah. No, that's not necessarily their reason though. If a person divorces 3 times, or they mention it 3 times in a row,
They're not well. That time, like because they're rushing to say 3 times, maybe.
Oh no, that's not the reason. No, I understand what you mean. No, that's not the reason. They say it 3 times in a row. Is this halal or haram? They say it 3 times in a row. Halal or haram? Naam. So if it's bid'ah, it's haram. Naam, it's haram. So the talaq which occurs, or they say it 3 times in one go, intending these 3 divorces, then it's talaq bid'i. So then the other scholars that state that it only occurs once, they state that a person cannot enforce a ruling upon something which is muharram. Naam. So the ruling cannot occur by way of something which is haram. I.e., in this case, bid'ah. The bid'ah of divorcing in one go. Naam. However, what is mentioned by the Jamhur is the stronger opinion. That if a person, essentially, what's the darbit with this is that the person intends those 3 divorces. And sometimes this can occur by way of ignorance. Now, that you find, Allahumma stand from amongst the Muslims, that they believe that in order for the divorce to be effective, they have to mention it 3 times. But at each of those 3, they intend. No. So say, for example, a person, they have made that decision and they believe that they are going to divorce that spouse, that wife, irrevocably. In their mind, they don't ever want to remain in that marriage. And so then they will mention that divorce 3 times with the intent of it being irrevocable. Now, with the intent of it being irrevocable. And this is first and foremost primarily due to their ignorance of the ruling. Due to their ignorance of the ruling being that they have to mention it. If they intend to mention it, they mention it at a particular time. When do they mention it, barakallahu feekum? They can't just mention it any time. Not time of anger, not necessarily that. When is it permissible for them to mention a divorce? So the woman cannot be in the menses. That's one of them. And the second thing I think you mentioned it was in and around it. Naam. So and after there has to be a period of time between, or so he cannot have had any intimate relations with her, marital relations with her after she's purified. Does that make sense? So she has the menses, for example. After she becomes pure, then in that period of time, he may initiate the divorce. Anything outside of that is muharram. But even though it's haram, it occurs. It's still valid. The point being is that if a person now mentions these 3 with the intent of divorce, 3 times, then it occurs. And people do this. People do this due to ignorance, first and foremost. Or people do this due to being overcome by hawa wal awatif. They are overcome by desires, or overcome by their emotions. and due to their, for example, extreme anger at that time, and their understanding or their belief that they don't want this wife in their lives any longer, then they will mention that 3 times irrevocably. So, however, as some scholars mention, if the person mentions this word of divorce, on more than one occasion, in one sitting, mentions it more than once on one occasion. However, his intent by repetition is emphasis of the first. Then that emphasis is essentially that first divorce. Does that make sense? So essentially, is bound by the intent of the spouse. Just as when we mention al-talaq al-kinaya. Anyone remember what the talaq al-kinaya was? The kinaya. As opposed to something else. There were 2 types of talaq we discussed. Talaq al-sarih or talaq al-kinaya. Naam. So words that connotate divorce. Naam. So words that are suggestive of divorce. However, there are essentially rajhan, that when these words are mentioned, there are possibilities. Naam, fi ihtimal, fi ihtimalat. There are possibilities that the words that are used could mean this and it can mean that. Like it can mean divorce, it could mean something else. For example, a man saying to the spouse, go back to your parents. Now, it could mean that he intends divorce. However, it could also mean that he just wants her to leave the house for a period of time. Ala kullin, this is bana'an ala niyati. Understanding whether it's a divorce or not is based upon the intent of the husband in uttering these words. Just as if the husband mentions these words of divorce more than once in this particular occasion, then it's dependent upon what he intended in that space of time. Now, what intended in that space of time. As for if the person repeats it now with the fa, and other than that, then again it goes back to the intent of the individual. If the person intended tawqid, then it doesn't occur. It doesn't occur except for once. If the person intended emphasis. Then remember one thing we mentioned though as a tanbih, a point of caution in relation to this issue here. I had the intent. I had caution for the husband, a word of caution.
But if he intended as free and have any, and then he says he didn't have any form of marital relations.
No. So the word of caution is that if he intended it, if he intended the divorce, if it's kinaya, or he intended the 3 times if he mentions it 3 times, then what is upon him is to be truthful. Now, what is upon him is to be truthful in that regard, and not first and foremost. You may find of individuals lie to themselves and seek to try and convince themselves that they didn't intend 3 whilst they intended 3, or lie to others, primarily their spouse, their wife, lie to them saying, no, I didn't intend 3, or I didn't intend the divorce. For indeed, if now we act upon what their statement is, we act upon their statement, and they're lying, then this person is blameworthy for anything that comes as a result of that. Now, what comes as a result, and what could possibly come as a result of that? What can come as a result of that is, for example, the man and the woman have relations. They're not actually husband and wife because of this particular ruling, but he's lied upon it. He's blameworthy for that because she doesn't know his full intent. Now, she's continuing with the marriage as is, but however, he has lied in terms of his intent. Now, thereafter, the author mentions as well, وَمَنْ شَكَّ فِي الطَّلَاقِ أو عدد. نعم في الطلاق وعدده. أو رضاع أو عددي بناء على اليقين. بناء على اليقين. So whoever has doubt in relation to the talaq, in relation to the divorce, or in relation to its amount, or who has doubt in relation to the rada', the suckling, or its amount, then it's based upon the yaqeen. It's based upon that which is certain. And this is due to the general principle that al-yaqeen, that is certainty, la yazul bi-shak. That yaqeen is not removed by doubt. Certainty is not removed by doubt. So the author begins mentioning the talaq. The person has shak in relation to talaq. What is intended here is that if the person has doubt whether the talaq occurred or not, so they doubt whether the talaq, whether the divorce occurred or not, then they act upon that which is certain. They act upon that which is certain, barakallahu fikum. And that which is certain is that they're married. Is that they're married. And so, what is meant by this? What is the scenario in this case? What is the scenario in this case? How can this be doubtful? How could they doubt it though? How does it, or what is the scenario where it could occur where it's doubtful? Moment of anger, okay. But if he's of anger, if it's to that extent where he doesn't even know what he's saying, فَلَمْ يَقَعْ, it doesn't occur in the first place then. If it's extreme anger. Because we're talking about the extreme anger where now he doesn't even know if he said it or not. Because he can't even retrace his words, then there would be no divorce in that regard.
Years of gap, you might got married and then now.
Is it where he says like go back to your mom's house?
Okay.
With that wording, but
yeah.
He thinks that maybe from that they're not married.
Possibly. So that could be this question, by the way, is an open question. There's no one main right answer. Now, but it could be that, for example, he's not too sure as to his intent. He's genuinely unsure what he intended. So he has doubt. He can't come to a rajih in terms of his intent. That I definitely intended divorce. If he uses words of kidaya, for example. That's one way. Now, so if he generally can't come to a conclusion, then this would be the case that he's still married. What else? Another example is that, or a question. I'll give you a question, then inshallah it'll lead to the example. Does the wife have to be present for the divorce?
No.
No, she doesn't. No. She doesn't have to witness it. So now, for example, the husband, he mentions words, and he may mention words, but he doesn't remember himself whether he mentioned the words of divorce in his own presence. So there's no one to witness it. So he's now relying upon himself and his memory. And he doesn't remember whether he mentioned it or not. Maybe he just, as they say, just rambling and talking. And within those words, he may have mentioned something divorce, but he doesn't remember. He just remembers that he was just talking and mentioning words. So again, if he's genuinely unsure, then it's based upon that which is certain, and that's that they're married. Because what is certain is that they are married. Now, what is certain that they had the nikah, fulfilled all those conditions, that's certain. As for now, the removal of that marriage or the dissolving that marriage by way of the divorce, then that is not certain. So we act upon that which is the certainty, barakallahu fikum. So likewise as well, the author mentions the adad, the amount. This is similar, in a similar scenario, where they may doubt the amount of divorces due to the fact that they may doubt whether one divorce occurred or not. Same reasons that we mentioned earlier, for example. And so they don't know whether this divorce was once or twice or 3 times. So if now, for example, in this scenario, they divorced once and it was certain. The husband divorced the wife once. He divorced her, and then he took her back. He took her back. And then the second occurrence came about, and there's doubt whether the divorce occurred or not. Yet again, due to the reasons that we mentioned, that there's genuine doubt. Then in this scenario, we base it upon that which is certain. And what is certain is what? One. What is certain is that it occurred once. As for the second one, then it's not certain. So the author, he mentions alongside that as well, the suckling. Whether the suckling or the amount of time suckled occurred. This is also mentioned. And again, we act upon that which is certain. So if now there's doubt whether the individual suckled from, the man suckled from the woman, and then all of the rulings that come along with that. If there's doubts regarding it, then we do not act upon that doubt. And so there's no tahrim. The man is not mahram for that woman. Does that make sense, Barakallahu feekum? It makes sense. Jayed. And likewise, if there's doubt in relation to the amount of time suckled, then you act upon the least amount. So the least amount is that which is certain. Least amount of that which is certain. And again, this is how a person should facilitate and act in terms of their ibadah as well. If they have doubt, then they act upon that which is certain. So for example, the person is praying and then he has doubts. He's reached the 4th rak'ah. But he has doubt, is this my 4th rak'ah or my 3rd rak'ah? And it's genuine doubt to the extent where he's not able to ascertain which one it is. Then what does he do? Which is 3. He acts upon that which is certain, which is the 3, the lesser of the 2. So, and then he prays the 3 as if it's, so he prays that 4th rak'ah, even though in reality it's his 4th rak'ah, he prays it as if it's his 3rd. And then he prays another one after that. And then after that, of course, what does he do before he completes the salah? Sajda sahw. Sajda sahw. He does the prostration of forgetfulness. So the same thing applies as a principle. That you act upon that which is certain. What is certain is the amount. Barakallahu feekum. So after that, the author raḥimahullah, he mentions وإن قال لنسائه إحداكن طالق ولم ينوي واحدة بعينها أخرجت بقرعة. So if he says to his wives, the man says to his wives that one of you are divorced. One of you are divorced. However, he doesn't mention or he doesn't intend any one of them. So the author mentions specifically, he doesn't intend any one of them. Then it is established by way of the drawing of lots. And this is due to the fact that this is the tariq, this is the path, or this is the way in order to solve that which we go, or that which includes the mubhamat. So anything that's mubham, anything that's general, unspecified, then these lots are a means of yani, solving it and rectifying it. Is that clear, barakallahu fikum? Now, وإن طلق جزءا من امرأته مشاعا أو معينا طيب كإصبعها أو يدها طلقت كلها. And so he mentions if he was to divorce a part of the wife. So he used to say, I divorced the finger, for example. He says, divorce, he said, I free myself from my wife's finger or a hand. Then with that, the divorce occurs with all of her. He's divorced all of her. And now, so for example, Shaykh mentions if the person was to say, قال يدك طالق, that your hand is divorced, or يدك عفوا طالق, your hand is divorced, or رجلك طالق, your leg is divorced, or words similar to that, then this is something which yani is or this divorce occurs for the whole of her. Now the guy occurs for the whole of her, because there's no taba'ud, is no regards of divorcing a section of the body, the parts of her body. So the talaq cannot be said to be upon some of her; it has to be upon all of. So, if it was to say, for example, and if the person was to say that I have divorced you half a divorce, so I want to give you half a divorce, or anything less than one. So I want to give you just, for example, 1/3 of a quarter of a divorce. Then anything or mention of divorce, then it occurs once. So the person cannot now state that he wants to do something which is half of or less than one. No, because there is no division. It's not you can't divide amongst divorces, or as you mentioned as well, specify a particular body part. Now, this cannot occur in the divorce. Allah Ta'ala knows best. Now, and that's the last we want to mention from this particular chapter. Allah knows best. Khalas, we'll conclude with that, because I want to discuss these next 2 chapters together, inshallah. The chapter, it pertains to Raj'a and the Iddah. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. فجزاكم الله خيرا وبارك الله فيكم وصلى الله وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. نعم.
Two questions. The first one is in terms of the slave being able to only divorce 2 times.
Yeah.
What's the hadith for that?
So there's I believe we mentioned it previously. There's specific narrations regarding for one and for the other. I'll find it for you, inshallah. Now.
The second question is, in a case of a husband and a wife holding different views on the issue of 3 in 1.
3 and 1.
3 divorces in one sitting.
Oh, they have different opinions. Yeah. And if so, she's with the Jamhur, for example, and he's with the Muhakkik. Okay.
Which one takes precedence?
His, because he's the one initiating the divorce. No, he's the one initiating the divorce, so it takes precedence because he's the one saying these words.
Follow-up question: say if she refuses to go back during the intertime, what's the reason not?
In that same scenario, or any scenario?
Not same scenario.
So she refused to go back because she says that. Then in that scenario, it would have to be taken to the Qadi. It would have to be taken to the Qadi, and the Qadi will make a final judgment with everything that's been said. So it will be opposite if, in that case. So let's say, for example, he's upon the opinion that it occurred once. You know, he says it 3 times, it occurred once. Now, and he's being honest that he says, I stated it 3 times, intending 3 divorces, but I know this is bid'ah and I know that it only occurs once. I'm upon that opinion. Now, and she's of the opinion of the Jamhur, no, it occurs 3 times. And I refuse to go back because I believe that this is a complete divorce, that this is irrevocable. Then it's something that they can raise to the judge. Now, so of course, in the lands of the Muslims, it will be the actual judge himself, the Qadi, as appointed by the Wali al-Amr. And in these lands here, the non-Muslims, you go to your local markaz, the marakaz of Salafiyah, that can aid you in that particular qadiyah, particular case. Now,
you know, like, you know, if like you had an argument with your wife, and then now you say divorce 1 time, and now she gets off.
She ghosts.
Yeah, like you don't see her no more now. Yeah, she's gone off to her family or whatever. She don't want to see you. She doesn't want to rectify. She doesn't even want to ask no questions about the mosque or anyone like that. She just gets to move it. How does like now it's been like 6-7 months or does that mean that now you're divorced? You don't need to go back and start begging. You just keep it moving and accept it. Or is it haram for her to do such actions? Because some people might just say, you know what, I don't want to ask the mosque. We've had the argument. You said divorce. I'm done with you.
Yeah. We're going to come to it in terms of our next chapters, where we discuss the iddah and taking the wife back. And if the man has divorced the wife, but it's a revocable divorce, so he's divorced for the first or the second time, right? Then what is upon the person or upon the couple is that they remain within the same home. Now, this is the kalam ahlul ilm. Specifically, Shaykh Uthaymeen, he mentions they remain in the same home. He establishes all of her rights. Likewise, she establishes his. Likewise, she beautifies herself in home, and she'll do so anyway, or she should do so anyway. Now, this is what is expected from them. If now, for example, any of the 2 of them are responsible for her not remaining in the home. So, for example, in the example you gave, she leaves the home. She said, "I'm not coming back." And then she's advised to come back, and she still refuses. She's blameworthy for that. Because now it's mukhalif l-sharia. They've opposed the sharia. If now he's saying, and you find this as well from the men, Allah guide them, they will say this as well. They will say, she's out of my house, she's not coming back in. Then again, first of all, you're mukhalif l-sharia, you've opposed the sharia. Secondly, you have now established that you're not going to give this person their rights. So again, it's muharram, it's actually just haram. So any time that person does that, or they both agree, I'm not going to come back. It's not about you agreeing and whatever else, and you feeling that you are upright and you've done the right thing because you're being amicable. No, because the reality is the Sharia establishes the iddah for a specific reason. Now, the first reason, of course, was whether to ascertain in that time period whether she's carrying a child or not. But also as well, from that iddah period, if you have that time period, 3 months, where they're living within the home, the rights are all being established. Now, all the rights being established. And after that, you still go out and fulfill the divorce, then you know for sure that this was something that was meant to be established. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. It's not now based upon one moment of anger, one moment of heightened emotion. Now, this is based upon 3 months of establishing the rights before Allah Ta'ala, and still you decide to separate, or the husband decides not to take her back, then this is something which is based upon a degree of certainty. This is his wish. But if now you don't establish that, then that becomes harmful. So in the scenario you mentioned, if now she leaves and she doesn't come back, but he's divorced her, and then those 3 months elapse, then the divorce occurs. But it's upon him though to establish the haqq upon her, that she has to return to the home. And if they were to go to a qadi, the qadi would tell her to return to the home. Now, there's the exception. The exception being that the woman has a genuine fear for her safety remaining in the home. There's a genuine fear for her safety remaining in the home. People hear of that ruling, and the desires cause them to try and find a way that that rule in itself applies to them. So then they will say, actually, I saw he was a bit angry. He gritted his teeth. So I don't feel safe in the home. So I'm not going to stay in the home. So that this rule doesn't apply to me. Now, just as we said in terms with the husband, he has to be just and he has to be honest when he's stating his intent. Now, if he states when he stated his words, the intent divorce, or when he stated the divorce 3 times, the intent irrevocable divorce, or did he intend to emphasize? It's to be honest. When that's the case, also that's the case as well. Now, also with that's the case where she has to be honest. Now that you're living with him for all this time, and you have to now establish, is it something which is a genuine fear, or it's a case of you don't want to just remain in the home and you don't want to feel like you are upon ma'asiyah, so you want to find a ruling that is something that is one that you agree with, or can allow you to do what you wish to do. Now, so upon both spouses in this regard. Of course, you have to fear Allah when you get married. You have to fear Allah in divorce as well. Now, and this is the reality. Wallahu a'lam. جزاكم الله خير إخوان. بارك الله فيكم. وصلى الله وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.